Good evening, my name is John Hub and I talk about video games on the internet. This year I've challenged myself to 100% all of these Yakuza games, all before the end of 2024. We're cutting it a little close. Today we'll be tackling Yakuza 6. What trials and tribulations will this game put me through? Will I be able to complete this game and the others before the end of the year? Or will I go down in history as Fraud Hub? Find out all of this and more in yet another installment of Year of Like a Dragon. Well guys, another day, another Yakuza adventure. Yakuza 4 was famously called that because there's 4 playable characters, 5 because there's 5, and 6 because the story takes 6 minutes to beat. In actuality, it took me about 3 hours from beginning to end to beat the story, and HowLongToBeat.com puts this game as one of the shortest in the entire series. This is partly due to Yakuza 6 being the game to introduce the state-of-the-art Dragon Engine. This is an engine upgrade that makes movement and animations feel buttery smooth, touts the best physics, and most importantly, revolutionizes cutscene skipping. That's right. With the option to press A to advance a line of dialogue, as well as the option to pause and skip any cutscene, I've never seen such a cutscene skippable game in my life, and I am living for it. This is a bit of a tangent, but with so much energy going towards creating a new engine for the game, I can't help but feel like the rest of the game likely suffered a bit during development. Everything from the story, to Kiryu being the only playable character, to the amount of activities to do in this game, makes the whole experience feel a bit limited compared to a game like Yakuza 5, 0, or Kiwami 1, which all came out right before 6. But sometimes, less is more. But not this time. Don't get me wrong though, this game is still great. I give every game in the series a baseline 8 out of 10. Additionally, I believe that the innovation that is the Dragon Engine was not only necessary, but it absolutely paid off, because every game that follows Yakuza 6 are some of my personal favorites in the entire series. It's just unfortunate that the Dragon Engine needed 1 or 2 games to get things right, as it came at the cost of slightly undercutting Yakuza 6, which aims to be the conclusive end to Kiryu's story. And thank God for that, am I right? But getting back on track, Yakuza 6's story was incredibly easy, short, but also action-packed and entertaining. I can confidently say that I didn't struggle on a single part of the story, and the biggest hurdles were never really anything combat related, but rather the baby holding minigame, where you have to correctly identify what Haruto wants every 5 steps, and this annoying part towards the end of the game where you have to find 9 poem stones scattered around town in order to progress the story. With the final boss beaten, I finished the story in no time at all, but the story is always just a fraction of completing a game in this series. I wasn't worried at all though. I'll even wager a guess that Yakuza 6 is the easiest 100% in the series. Who the fuck is she? There are 2 things that are guaranteed when playing Yakuza. Shirtless men, which I enjoy, and ridiculous sub-stories, which are also pretty good. These are brief but entertaining side plots that usually reward you with some sort of item or advantage in other side content. There are 51 of these, but the only ones that you need to be concerned with are about the boy Onomichio, the lovable mascot of the city of Onomichi. The fully grown man-child isn't real, he can't hurt me. The sub-stories were relatively painless to complete. They all consist of picking the right dialogue options, which if you choose the wrong one, you can just keep going until you pick the right one, as well as a combat encounter here and there. Honestly, the hardest part was finding these things, since they don't show up on the map until you've started one. Unlike previous games where you have to beat every other sub-story, you can unlock the final sub-story in Yakuza 6 by beating 2 specific sub-stories, and this one is a fight against Joomon, who Kiryu almost always fights in the final sub-story of these games. I had no issues fighting him, as I was already fully upgraded by this point and had plenty of healing. While the inclusion of amusing sub-stories is all but expected from a Yakuza game, no one could have predicted that in this game, Kiryu get iPhone. That's right. He could use it to look at the map and get physically stronger, but it also gives him access to the Troubler app. This is a system where you respond to civilian requests. Usually you have to beat up someone harassing a civilian, but you put out a fire here and there too. You even defuse a bomb, I think. These are very similar to sub-stories, but with a little less story and a little more do this thing because I said so. I guess in that way, if you already have sub-stories, that makes these Dom stories.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Troubler app requests show up at random intervals when you're a certain distance away from them. Harder than finding all the sub-stories without map markers, it was really difficult to get every one of these requests to pop, and I regret not doing these whenever they showed up, because this ended up being one of the last things that I did. They're like regular games, but they're small. I'm gonna call them mini games. And yes, that was my original idea, and no, you can't call them that, only I can. I firmly believe that if minigames didn't exist, this series would be a whole lot easier to complete. There's 16 minigames this time around, and I'll be ranking them from easiest to hardest. Here I go! This is what I call any application that I'm on. RizApp is actually a real-life personal training gym that, when you look it up on Google, the top result is a Reddit thread saying, quote, "It's a gigantic ripoff, and their revenue model thrives off of people like me with low self-esteem." And as someone with low self-esteem, I gotta say, I was thriving playing this minigame. It's like the easiest one. Completing this one consists of doing 12 training sessions. A training session consists of 2 workout minigames, simple stuff like bench pressing or deadlifting, and then ordering a specific food item at a restaurant based on a trainer recommendation. There's also a shop in the building that gives you muscle supplements that will give you skill orbs, which you can use to upgrade your abilities to max. I also paid millions to max Kiryu out, so maybe 350,000 yen is not such a bad deal, Reddit. Live chat is the horny minigame representative for this Yakuza game. You go to an internet cafe and you can type. I like to imagine that Kiryu is just typing with his 2 index fingers, to a couple of different cam girls. Kiryu tries and succeeds in being the coolest / least weird guy in the chat room too. This one is as simple as pressing the button prompts to type messages, and after fully chatting with every girl, you're done. To round out the easy section of this list, I'll be putting the Sega arcade classics, Space Harrier, Fantasy Zone, Super Hang-On, and Outrun, since all these only require an easy-to-reach score in order to complete. No matter what I do, all I think about is you. And even when I'm with my boo, you know I'm crazy over you. I would hardly even consider bar chat a minigame, but it is in the minigame section of the completion list, so legally I have to put it here. Kiryu finds a bar on the east side of town and slowly befriends its patrons and staff through conversation. The minigame part of it are these long conversations with everyone, where you quickly need to fill in the blank of the conversation using a list of choices to pass the vibe check. If you're not ready, these can pop up really suddenly and you need to reply as fast as possible. I put it this low on the list because I was able to beat it first try, but there's quite a few completion requirements for this one. Darts is a game that was vastly improved by the Dragon Engine. You get an aiming reticle and you just have to throw the dart with perfect timing in order to make the dart go where you want it to go. To complete this one, you need to play with every single rule set, play 10 matches, get 5 hat tricks, which are just triple bullseyes, and play on every difficulty, which is probably the hardest part since the hardest CPU does not make mistakes. But I did that. Like darts, the batting center really glowed up from the Dragon Engine. Actually, no, I think it's glued up. Can I get a hashtag glued up in the chat, please? Thank you. The batting center has home run courses as well as challenge courses, both with the goal of just hitting the ball into a target as much as possible. This one is all about positioning, timing, and adjusting to changes in the pitcher's throws. After doing 6 different iterations of this already, I'm very used to this one. Still a bit difficult though. What's brand new, however, is Virtua Fighter 5. Gone are the days of Sega arcade games that came out before I was born. I love this game, so much so that I found out that you could just spam this punch combo on Brad to cheese wins on every round before finding out this is how the rest of the internet did it too. The completion for this one consists of beating every arcade stage, winning a match as every character, and winning 30 matches. This is a nitpick, but there's a little less than 30 characters, so I had to waste time playing more matches on characters that I already played as, and that really pissed me off. Speaking of things that piss me off, Mahjong kinda does, I guess. Any feeling or emotion that you can think of, I've felt towards Mahjong. I would describe us as being in a real on-again, off-again relationship, and we're just a roller coaster of emotions. I will be forward and say she was a little harsh this time around, because you have to place first at every single Mahjong table and win 30 hands in order to complete this. To make matters even worse, there's no cheat items for Mahjong in this one, like there have been in other games. Dude, what do you mean I can't cheat on you anymore? I can explain. Okay, you take the batting center from Yakuza 6. You make it into a real thing. You then take it, put it into a video game. Now you have baseball in Yakuza 6. I knew that all these years in the batting center were leading up to something big. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't think to make a full-fledged baseball minigame sooner, especially considering Yakuza 5 had a dude whose whole thing was baseball. You start this minigame with a team of pretty mediocre players. Through sub-stories or finding members on the street and recruiting them for a lot of money, you can get a pretty great team. I would even go as far as to say that recruiting every baseball team member is one of the most expensive things in this game. And the minigame itself is, well, baseball. You choose a team to play against, and the game kind of auto-plays the innings, but you get 3 at-bats to influence the outcome of the game. Even with bad low-level units, these pitches are a lot easier to hit than at the batting center, but what really makes this one hard is how much grind is required to beat it. On top of recruiting every member, which costs a lot of money, and beating every mission, you need a batter with at least 100 RBI. And just in case you don't know anything about sports, that means you gotta play a lot of baseball. That's kind of the common thread with some of these, quote, harder mini-games in Yakuza 6. Most of these aren't even that hard, they're just time-consuming and needlessly long, and it creates mini-games that are annoying to complete rather than hard. Another example that exemplifies what I was just talking about is Cat Cafe. It's a minigame that's not exactly a minigame as well, but again, it's in the minigame section, so I gotta allow it. There's a location called the Cat Cafe in Kamurocho, where Kiryu is tasked with bringing in cats that he finds on the street. There are 19 cats in total between the two explorable cities, and there's a sizable radius where you can find any of these cats. To complete this, you need to find every single cat and feed them cat food until a meter fills all the way. Now the game throws a couple of wrenches into what could have otherwise been a very simple and easy minigame. First, there absolutely could have been just a single location for each cat. Second, there's actually no way to guarantee that a cat will show up in any of its possible spawn locations, and the only way to respawn them or try again is to travel between cities or use a taxi to reload the area. Something weird that actually worked is if you break a bunch of items about a block away from where a cat is supposed to spawn, it would be more likely to spawn. I got this to work quite a few times. I don't know if this has to do with the game having maybe too many objects spawned in, so a cat doesn't show up unless some objects are missing. I have no clue. Third and most ridiculous, there are half a dozen cat food flavors to feed these cats, and if you don't feed them one of their favorite flavors or the overpriced golden cat food the first time you encounter a cat, it'll walk away before the meter refills, and you'll have to find it all over again. Even worse, there's cats that regardless of what food you give them, they will still take up to 4 encounters to fully max them out. This minigame officially wins the John Hub Award for biggest pain in my ass. Another shining example of a minigame that could have been simple but absolutely isn't is spearfishing. This is a really cool on-rails arcade shooter type of game where you shoot a harpoon gun at different fish. The completion metrics are for things like completing every course, catching every fish, maxing out your level in the minigame, like easy stuff. You can buy spear guns from various shops, with the best one being really efficient for clearing even the hardest course. And good thing for it because, well, I don't know how to say this, but clearing the advanced course gives you about 20,000 experience, and to get from level 1 to 10, which is the cap, not too many level ups required as you could tell, but you need 960,000 experience for that. So this took me about 40 runs of the same 5-minute course. You can do the math on how much time that took because I'm too sad to. The only real upside to all of this is that it gave me enough money where money was never an issue again. Okay, now when I 100% one of these games, or talk about a game in general, really anything you may see on this channel, I try to give as realistic an image as possible of what I went through, my experiences, and maybe what it would be like if you, the viewer, tried playing this game. I try not to exaggerate unless it's for comedic purposes, but I will say with absolute confidence that Puyo Puyo is the single most difficult thing I've had to do for a game completion on this channel, period. It's a perfect mix of the completion requirement being too outlandish, me being ass at the game, and also the game being a little too complex for a mini-game in an otherwise unrelated game. Worse than anything I've encountered in this game or the ones before it, Puyo Puyo is the hardest minigame to complete in the Yakuza series, and it made an otherwise easy to complete game into an absolute nightmare. The only requirements for completing Puyo Puyo are winning 30 matches and beating all 10 unique rivals. The game itself is a puzzle, tile matching game, not unlike Dr. Mario or Tetris. You have to connect 4 little slime guys of the same color in order to clear space, and you get an extra bonus if you link multiple connections together. You face off against CPUs in a one-on-one battle, and those multiple links are all but necessary if you want to beat a single enemy. The game is hypothetically endless, as once you connect links, it'll send gray slimes over to the opponent, making it harder for them to play. The same goes for the CPU, where they can send you gray slimes as well. Once an opponent's board overflows, you continue playing and another rival shows up. The obvious advantage to having the same board throughout the whole game is that you can set up combos to send to your next rival right as they appear. The first 9 rivals showed up pretty easily. The 10th rival, however, will not show up until you rack up 25 or more consecutive wins in a single session of this game. That means you play on the same board with the same progress and not only have to survive but thrive through 25 or more matches in a row, and then also beat the rival that shows up. Nobody mentioned this when I was looking it up, but the last rival is really good at the game as well, and will beat you if you don't have something lined up the moment she shows up. Again, there's no telling when you'll run into her, you just need 25 or more wins, but once you do, make sure you have something to throw her off right away. I ran into her a grand total of 6 times before I beat her, with the lowest number of wins before encountering her being 25, and the highest being 31. I finally beat her, and when I did, I needed 27 wins first. I may upload my full winning run for anyone that may find it useful as well. I'm not very good at the game, but I did execute a very cheesy strategy pretty well that I think is very easy to follow. But holy fuck, never again, man. Yakuza games love including minigames, but they also love including side plots. What if, though, they kissed? If you're planning on playing Yakuza 6 and doing a singular side activity, I'd highly recommend Clan Creator. It's this game's take on a real-time strategy game. This minigame will return for Kiwami 2 with some improvements, but I like the more simplistic, spawn in 100 units and watch them all go wild antics of this one. I just love it, bro. It's like watching a bunch of ants fight over a crumb, but one of those ants is Kazuma Kiryu. The completion requirements for Clan Creator range from reasonable to stupid. You have to beat all 32 missions, some are story related, some are side missions. Beating the story missions will sometimes reward you with new clan members, which unlocking every clan member is a requirement as well. They can be found through sub-stories, on the street, as well as playing through the Clan Creator story missions. Optionally, there's characters that can be unlocked by typing in codes. Pretty much every character you're seeing on screen right now is a code character, since these are much stronger on average than anyone you'll find or unlock naturally in-game. Although these weaker characters do serve 2 crucial purposes. You have this clan family tree which you can slot your units into to improve your stats during the minigame, but there's simply not enough space for just the overpowered code characters. Additionally, there's a completion requirement to upgrade a unit to its max level. Experience can be obtained through Clan Creator missions or by using the same upgrade orbs that you would use to upgrade your character in the main game. The lower rank units level up exponentially faster than any of the higher rank ones, so I got this completion metric by leveling up a poopy tier unit. The last completion metric, which I'm going to just call busy work flat out, is getting 100 mission victories. As I mentioned, there's only 32 missions, so I just sat there and ran the same easy mission an additional 70 times. Every time along the way I had to confirm my team, select the mission, wait through loading screens before and after the mission, do the mission, and then that's one more on the board. Your units just stand there and stare at you after every win too, which is symbolic of the hollow victory that is winning the same mission for an hour and a half straight. It's good stuff. Unfortunately too, if you're just looking for the Platinum Trophy and not trying to complete the in-game completion list for this game like I am, the 100 victories is tied to a trophy. You hate to see it. Yakuza 6 has 2 explorable cities. There's Kamurocho, which you can tell you're in because Kiryu wears a suit jacket here, and there's also Onomichi, which I'm assuming has banned all jackets or something. I don't know, I skipped all the cutscenes. Aside from the sub-stories and troubler requests, there are a handful of things to do in each of these cities. You have to order every food and drink item on the menu at every restaurant in both cities. This task was once extremely tedious due to Kiryu being unable to eat or drink when he's at full health or drunk, which brought a sort of eat one thing at a time and then lose HP to eat some more energy that just brings the whole vibe down. Thankfully, the Dragon Engine brings a lot of quality of life changes that make tasks like ordering from restaurants or sobering up 10 times less annoying. There's also food combinations, which are buffs gained from eating certain menu items at a restaurant. While you can eat any amount of food at a time, there is a hunger meter which stops you from receiving these food combination bonuses if it fills up all the way. Luckily, we have upgrades and drugs to dial that back a bit. There are all sorts of collectibles and interactables scattered around town. I mentioned the cats, which are technically a minigame, but there's also safes around town that you have to open. You have to find the keys on the ground first and then use them to open their corresponding safe. In Onomichi, there's a lot of different interactables too, like donation boxes, fortunes, statues to pray to, all of which require some sort of donation of yen or items. I kind of just mindlessly threw items and money at these until the requirement popped. There's an entire system based around Kiryu mourning his fallen friends and family. You find a photo of your dearly departed, take photos at various locations, and a stencil of a character shows up in the photo itself. This spirit photography thing is not tracked at all in the completion log or the trophies, so I totally did this one, guys. Scout's Promise. In Kamurocho exclusively, you can visit Club Shine and build your relationship with one of 5 hostesses. Spoiler alert, you have to max out your relationship with all 5 to complete this game. This one is pretty simple. You order food and drinks here and there and choose a conversation topic and pray that the hostess likes hearing about it. Just like in real life, most of the women you talk to here love hearing about Goro Majima and hate being asked, "What's your body count?" Just before maxing a hostess out, they each have a sub-story to be completed. These are very easy and usually consist of fighting a stalker or helping them decide if they should change careers, and you get a big smooch at the end, which I'm a big fan of personally. Lastly, there are completion metrics tied to just about anything you can think of. Walking a certain distance, taking photos on your phone, drinking every drink in the vending machines, as well as some combat things like defeating a couple hundred enemies on the street, but the hardest one of these mundane tasks is to find 5 enemies with the name Sega on the street and defeat them. I was already way past finished with all the other completion metrics that revolved around combat at this point, and I had to fight hundreds of more enemies just to get this one metric complete. Although around the same time, I completed the task walk 100 kilometers, so maybe the game planned this out perfectly. Or it was just a coincidence. But come to think of it, there were actually a lot of weird coincidences that I felt like maybe could have been just odd balance choices for this game. As I mentioned, I had to run the same spearfishing and clan creator missions many times over, but the money that those gave me was exactly enough for every expense I had in the game. From recruiting every member to the baseball team, to upgrading a clan creator member to the max level, to buying items at Rizap to fully upgrade my stats and skills. It's odd to say, but this game's 100% run almost feels perfectly balanced around the monotonous bullshit you have to do, and if I hadn't run those same missions dozens of times over, I wouldn't have earned the yen in a similarly grindy way to make ends meet. Well, whatever. Game's complete. See you next time. Wait, I lied. After 100%ing the game, there's also a trophy for beating the game on Legend difficulty, which is unlocked after beating the game for the first time. Normally this could suck, but a lot of games in the Yakuza series let you do your Legend mode run in New Game Plus. But Yakuza 6 is different in the best way possible. As what I can only imagine are reparations for putting Puyo Puyo in this game, there's actually a secret way to get the trophy for Legend difficulty without playing the entire game over again. If you have save data from before you beat the game, when you check the difficulty in the settings, you actually have the ability to change it to Legend from that save file when you couldn't do that before. To my knowledge, this is the only game in the franchise that lets you do this, but yeah, I was just able to change the difficulty to Legend right before the final boss and then fight him. So here's a sick montage of my entire Legend run.
Unexpected item in
See? Told you could beat the game in 6 minutes. So this was a pretty short video. Apart from Puyo Puyo and the 40 spearfishing runs, the cat cafe, and running the clan creator 100 times, it was a pretty smooth and carefree 100%. Like, even though Puyo Puyo is undoubtedly the hardest thing I've done in this challenge thus far, I would still consider Yakuza 6 the easiest 100% I've done. From beginning to end, it took me 41.2 hours to complete the in-game completion list, as well as the trophy list for this game. But could I recommend that you, the viewer, complete this game? Honestly, if you're a trophy hunter, the platinum for this game is cake. It's really only the in-game completion list, which surprisingly isn't required for the platinum, that was trouble. So yeah, this is my first ever go ahead, complete the game recommendation. It might just be my last. Thank you so much for watching. Your continued support is what's keeping me going strong at this challenge, and I really hope I can 100% all these games before the end of the year. In case you're wondering, the remaining games in order are Judgment, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Lost Judgment, Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, and lastly, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. You're gonna have to wish me luck on that one because it's quite a lot. If you got this far in the video, feel free to drop a like, a subscribe. If you want your name in the end credits and want to see some sneak peeks of future videos, consider becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon. The channel member and Patreon rewards are identical, so I would not recommend doing both, but I guess you can if you want. Anyway, keep on rocking in the free world and doot doodaloot doot.